Okay, everyone, 7:16. I'd like to now open the Sherborn Conservation Commission meeting of September 21st, 2023 with I go to it. I'll do the normal. I'll move to open the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll have a roll call vote, or in which case everybody announce their name and their vote. Michael Lesser, aye.
Carol McGarry, aye.
Did you guys, I guess.
Michael, can you just call on people? Because this is so disorderly.
I know, I realize that doesn't work.
We'll just
tried it so many
We'll
times.
start this all over again. Michael Lesser, aye. Steve?
Steve Scrimshaw, aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Oh, Courtney Eck, aye.
Okay, Courtney Eck, aye. Is that what you
Yes, thank you. We got a full name here for the record.
Okay.
Jacob Strauss, aye.
Carol?
Carol McGarry, aye.
Okay, the meeting is now open, 5-0. We'll figure this out. Okay. Is anything on the come up within 24-hour rule that we need to discuss tonight? That's particular urgency?
Nope. I don't see anything.
Okay, then the agenda stands as held. We have 2 minutes to the RDA. Let's see if there's anything simple that I guess there's nothing. Since we only have 2 or 1.5 minutes, there's nothing there. I will bring up, I'll start a topic, maybe, that we'll vote, that somebody filed for administrative approval on Bullard Street, that in the end they're withdrawing it and no work has been done whatsoever on it, because they had said to hold off on it. So the question is whether we, I have no problem, since Joyce said we didn't do any work on it, that we would refund the $70 fee. Does anybody have any concerns about doing that? Because we have to vote on it.
I have no concerns.
No.
Okay, then I move that we, well, I guess I don't actually have the address. So actually, I think it's in our folder.
63 Bullard Street.
Thank you. I move that the fee for an administrative approval for 63 Bullard Street be refunded, since no work has been done on that project.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Steve?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. We can, I guess, Deborah, you and Joyce can discuss what needs to be submitted to the treasurer's office.
Very good.
To refund that.
Thank you.
Okay. Joyce is maybe not going to be here tonight. She has some other engagements, so we'll see whether she, we'll see if and when she shows up. But I think I have all the stuff from her, so I'll see what I can do about this. Okay, 7:20. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I guess, Deborah, try to remember to put in the folders the notice of public hearing.
Oh.
I because I usually get them, I clip them out of the newspaper just to check, but it's easier.
It is. Okay, sure.
Okay, just for the future, no big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the Town of Sherborn will hold a virtual public hearing using Zoom technology at 7:20 on the 21st day of September 2023. The request for determination of applicability RDA hearing will be held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw to consider a proposal by the applicant's representative, McIntyre Engineering, for work related to a septic system replacement within a wetland buffer zone at 28 Lake Street, map 10, lot 37. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given the opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay, hearing's now opened. I see that
I'm here.
Dan is here. He magically appeared. And I can either put it up or you can put it up on your screen and take it away.
I can share it here.
Okay.
Does everyone see that plan?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. For the record, Dan McIntyre representing Corrine Lenders, owner of 28 Lake Street. Corrine is in the process of getting a house ready to sell, and she failed the Title V inspection, so we were retained to design a new one. To orientate you, off the screen up at the top is where Lake Street is. She's got a driveway that comes down into the garage. Over here is Obed Lane, which is a private road servicing one house in the back. It's a gravel road. The existing well is in the front of the house. The existing system is in the back lawn area. We are proposing to put the system back in the same location as the existing system in an effort to meet the minimum 100-foot setback from the well and trying to maximize the setback from the wetland. So we're proposing to put in a septic tank. There'll be a smaller pump tank next to it and going up into a leach field here. The bulk of the work is outside the 100-foot buffer, but we do have part of the leach field encroaching into the 100-foot buffer here. And we are proposing to take down 3 trees in this area, primarily because we think we're going to be into the root system of those trees. And they're currently leaning toward kind of the sunlight. They're right on the edge of the tree line, and they're all leaning kind of toward the sunlight. So we're proposing to take those down. And as mitigation, since there's a number of canopy trees throughout that whole area along Obed Lane, we're proposing to do a 2-to-1 mitigation with some understory bushes to get a more robust understory. The construction access will be coming down Obed Lane through an existing cart path through the woods here, which we think it's the only access to the backyard, really. I think that was how they built the pool back in the day, but we're really not sure. But there's a cart path here. That's how we access for the test pits, and that's how they can access for construction. Although for some reason it doesn't show. Yeah, there we go. We got, we're putting erosion controls along the property line in the back and up through here to contain any sediments from the construction. And I think with that, we could turn it over for questions. The wetlands are off-site over here. Obed Lane and the wetland over here is actually town property. Town of Sherborn owns this land. And it's fed by a large swale that comes off the drainage off of Lake Street. And with that, I think I can turn it over for questions.
I'll just add before people question that I think in the proposal you're including putting up some markers.
Yes, Joyce did ask us to include some markers, so we've added that to the plan.
I guess where are they? I'm trying to see them on the plan itself. Where you're
Well, she suggested that we attach
just,
them to some of the mature trees in that area.
Yeah.
So that'll be to be determined based on a little site looking.
I think, yeah, field judgment would suffice there to figure out where those should go.
Okay. And I'll say essentially, given all the setbacks from other things here, there's not a lot of alternative. There's no real alternative sites.
Yeah. It's working in
couldn't
a
find
little
Right.
little sliver there.
Mhm.
And it's also separated by open lane
It
Mhm.
is.
between the wetlands and the system.
Okay. I'll open it up to any questions from the commission.
Looks reasonable to me.
Yeah. Having a not failed septic system is a improvement on the current condition for the wetland.
It is. The existing system is in the groundwater table, which is why it failed.
Right. That's suboptimal. So this will be a big improvement,
Yes.
even if we need to lose a few trees.
Yes. Sure. Steve.
Just, it seems obvious that this needs to be replaced, and this is good. I have a question sort of maybe goes beyond this property, but is a 2-to-1 shrub to tree ratio sort of a formula or a common trade-off? Or I'm asking, I'm not.
Well,
Not
your tree policy calls for a 1-to-1 tree replacement. If we're taking down a canopy tree, you'd want a 1-to-1 replacement with another canopy tree. But there's a provision in there also to use understory shrubs if the area already has sufficient canopy trees besides the one we're taking down. So we felt that was the most prudent for this particular site, and we went with a 2-to-1 ratio based on Joyce's recommendation.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I think it's pretty obvious that, 2 shrubs is not equal 1 tree in terms of tree biomass, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, no, I agree as an issue of at some point with all the climate change issues and other things that right now under wetlands protection, carbon or biomass is not it's not yet an interest or a factor. That's something we can talk about going forward to try to improve that kind of situation in terms of that kind of substitution issue.
Well, to put it another way, it doesn't provide the same habitat as mature trees do. I'm not saying this should block this. Or this isn't exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah, the understory didn't look too bad, but it could be some improvement. Right. The question is that in this case, it looked like, I don't know if you looked at the pictures, that the canopy itself was fairly well maintained, even without these trees, that it was dense enough that we weren't opening up anything more. When we were looking at the pictures, we didn't do a site visit, but that's what I saw from the pictures and talking to Joyce.
And I think some of the smaller trees are going to start to bloom a little bit bigger when these other trees are taken down and get a little more sunlight in there. I think they'll pop.
Yeah, it's true too. Carol?
Yeah, Dan, I think I had a couple questions about it because I think I would echo what Steve said, which is that, how do we make this a more robust habitat? And one thing is, rather than putting it in the understory, put it on the edge, because shrubs often thrive when they're at the edge of woodlands, and then make it a continuous, kind of create a continuous line out. So I was curious why they're in kind of 2 separated clumps like that. Is it because they're both under the understory or what?
They were along
we did kind of put it on the edge. This was our original proposal, was a 1-to-1, where we're taking the trees down in this area here.
Yeah.
Going to put the bushes kind of right on the edge of the new tree line.
Yeah.
And then Joyce suggested to double it up. So we put some over in here on the edge of the cart path tree line to kind of fill that area in.
Okay, so they're both basically they're both on the edge of the tree line, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Because the bubbly illustration is the tree line, correct? This is a pretty
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you just want to get it
tree
enough.
line will follow
right.
the erosion control here.
Erosion control.
I think you just want to get it enough out from under the trees that it's not competing with the roots, and they'll flourish.
Agree.
I have nothing else on this. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, basically in the folders for us, there's I guess, proving this is a -3 with conditions where the conditions are the erosion control barrier, the mitigation with the shrubs for the tree removal, the 3 wetland markers, and stockpiling and equipment storage. There's none of that in the buffer zone, as well as, and then a final inspection by the commission.
I think that's it.
Those would be the conditions that would go, that we would attach to this if we go ahead and approve it. Does anybody have any questions about those conditions? They're also in the folder.
Okay.
No,
sounds good.
In that case, oh yeah, is there anybody in the public who wants to make any comments? I finally remembered to ask.
Yeah.
Ask for any public comment. I see nobody raising their hand or talking. Okay, in that case, I move for this project, we're going to go forward as a -3 with the conditions that we discussed.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Steve?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We'll get this out to you. Hopefully it'll all be signed. Oh yes, everybody go sign this over the weekend.
That would be appreciated.
This will be in the box as of now. And
Yes,
so,
it's in the box.
it's in the box. So please go sign it so that on Tuesday when Deb goes in, we can process it all. And we'll go from there. Okie doke. Thank you.
Thank
Dan.
you very much.
Okay, see you. It's 7:34. I'll head here. Let's see. Okay, we have a few more minutes here. Just so you know, we're going to have a gap tonight. Well, maybe we'll see how it goes because some of the hearings are being continued. Actually, the remaining hearings will be. So we have 5 minutes. I'd like to.
My name is Chairman.
Excuse me.
Shang, if I may, between your meetings, I have one request quickly. I don't see Joyce here. So last meeting for the 3 Prospect Street, I couldn't make it. And Joyce requests that we contact Board of Health to see if we can get the waiver for the commission. So to skip the concrete cap. So it's going to be a lengthy variance. And so, Board of Health is very strict on their rules. And I look at the situation, we're going to feel that, well, all the way with the crushed stone to just 4 feet below the top of grades, which is set like 2 or 3 feet higher than the wetlands. So even we kept with the 6-inch concrete, the water should go seeping on the side to feed in the wetlands. So it just save us the uncertainties and the unnecessary delay. So I just like to come in to ask
Okay.
him.
Let's see, I guess that would normally come under site issues that Joyce would bring up. So I guess, and I know that was an outstanding issue, so we'll treat it under site issues. So to understand what you're saying, that, right, we had discussed the fact that the concrete seemed to be unnecessary for something that's just a dug well. And what are you saying? I guess I wasn't clear what.
Yeah,
What
I agree with
is
you.
that it's that the board, that's too complicated to pursue with the Board of Health?
That's correct, because they said that, so it's still a well in their consideration. We can make it the argument, well is a well, so it means to the commission, it should follow their standards. And then we need to get a variance and all, it's hard to get the variance going to set, I mean, really unprecedented things, and it's just not good for them to do. So we have to go through all those hearings. And I would agree with you if that's an easy say, oh, just administrative approval, they can waive that based on the reason. But if we have to go through the variance application, all that things, it's just, I feel it's just an unnecessary burden to the applicant. The reason is, so we are not fill the whole well with the concrete. It's only 6 inches on the, like in the very top almost. So there's a 6 foot of crushed stone filled that will let the water seep in to the side of the the well was setting higher. It's not.
Oh yeah, no, I guess it's 6 inches, and that's about 3 or 4 feet down, I guess, even if I remember. Okay,
Right, and the well is elevated 2 to 3 feet higher. So there's, I think it's not going to stop the water totally from feeding the wetlands.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried about that. It just seems to be concrete is not necessarily the most benign material, and therefore it also does leach stuff. So it would be nice to avoid a whole block of it there. But basically, the site will be level above that all, essentially.
Right. Yes, it will be natural soils leveled.
And have you
on top of the concrete?
Have you approached the Board of Health about?
Yes, we
what
did.
it would take, and they said it would have to go through a formal variance hearing.
Right.
Okay, I just want to be clear about that. Yeah, I mean, I understand the problem with regulations is that it's hard to do a lot of one-off adjustments to things, so I can understand their position as well, even though they might in principle agree with us as well. But right, it requires a process for them that the applicant does not want to go through. I guess then it comes back to the has the whole access issue of how you will be going back there to and even putting an
Michael, I'm a little unclear tonight because I'm slow. Why are we talking about this when it's not on the agenda?
Because normally it would be a site issue that Joyce would bring up because it was an ongoing issue.
Yeah, she told me she will, but she's not here because
I think she said she was going to talk to you tomorrow. And
yes, but she said she will bring this issue to the.
That doesn't mean she's going to come to a meeting. I don't know what we're going to discuss tonight when it's not on an agenda.
Well, it's on the. I'm saying it's under site issues. You can disagree, but I always, because normally that's where we ask her if she has any site issues, and she brings up things like this, or the agents do, without listing the specific sites. The question is,
she did promise me she's bring up tonight. That's why I'm here.
How, I guess the process is, how urgent is it for you to get some sort of approval today versus whether you work it out with her and whether we have to, because we would have to do this as whether this is a minor change to the order of conditions, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I still work with her. Tomorrow I have a meeting noontime.
I'm just trying to understand
go through the access.
If we're going to do a formal vote on it and whatever else, whether that it can be done at our October 5th meeting, make it a more formal item on the agenda, or is that particularly holding you up?
Yeah, because with all that, the Board of Health is not proceeding with their review on the septic systems. And this project has been holding for over a month just
Oh,
because of
this
minor
particular
issue.
little change.
Yeah, right. They do, if without the minor plan approval, the Board of Health is it's already a couple of months. They have the septic plan originally, just not well. That's their procedure again. I cannot change their things, and that's really hurting the owner to proceed it with his project. So that's why.
Okay, well, let me just go to the commission again about the process issue of whether this is part of site issues and whether this is an ongoing sort of request for a minor, what I think is a minor amendment to an order of conditions that I would approve. Question is whether, and that it's been going on for a while, that I feel somewhat interested in moving it forward so this project can go, but depends what others people feel about this process.
I would be inclined to let Joyce work out the access issue and follow her recommendations about what the site access should be.
Yes, I still sticking with that. No, I'm not asking for anything for waiving that
I
process.
thought we had already authorized Joyce to do that at a previous point.
Right.
Yeah, we will follow through. Because she told me, because I was not at the meeting, the only thing is to get the whether we need to stick in with the we can go with our well decommission plan, or she said the commission would like us to explore if we can get the Board of Health to agree not to put the concrete cap in. I did go through that process.
So if
and
he's
just coming back
explored it,
reported.
sorry, I'll interrupt you since we're a little tight. I guess I would say maybe we don't even need to vote. Basically, the order just says how it should just be commissioned.
We're not voting tonight.
Well, the question is whether he needs anything formal anyway, or whether he could just go ahead. Well, because we're just going to say, because we're not going to dispute what is requested by the Board of Health and the well person. So whether there's really nothing for us to say other than, fine, you have to do what the Board of Health wants and just let them go do it.
That's all I'm asking this to confirm that. Then tomorrow when I walk into access issue, that's a separate issue. We will still follow through on that.
So maybe there is no vote to be had on this.
It's almost just a straw opinion. I just want to get a comfortable. I can.
There's no opinion tonight because nothing is on an agenda.
Okay.
You're going to hold to that. Okay.
That was a little bit
I agree with Courtney. I mean, we don't have all the material in front of us. I really.
Well, we had the material.
I know we had it, but we don't have it now.
I'm sorry, but it's like we don't have people that just show up at a meeting and ask us to make a decision on something.
No. But again, that's to clarify it. I did talk to Joyce yesterday, and she said she will bring this issue to the commission. Otherwise,
she said she would talk to me and Michael, and that she would go out and visit the site with you
tomorrow. But she also will bring up the concrete cap issue because I told her we have difficult to get the Board of Health approval, and I just text her message too. I say, Joyce, you told me you will bring the concrete cap issue. If she can determine that, I'm fine. I don't need to ask in the commission. But when I proceeded, she said the commission.
I just spoke to her on the phone, Jisheng. We're gonna take care of it, but it's not happening at the meeting tonight.
No, I understand. Just to
okay.
I was just a little bit confused because I saw this. She's going to bring this to the commission tonight, and I don't see the agenda.
I'm going to stop it all.
Okay.
We'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting formally, and you'll work with Joyce. And I'm sorry we didn't get this more organized beforehand, but at this point, given the way where we are on the commission, please just deal with her going tomorrow and see what you feel you could do, and we'll formally put it on the agenda for next time. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, she said she can approve it. You authorize her.
Just leave it at that.
Yeah,
We'll leave it
okay.
at that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, 7:46. I am now going to, we have two hearings here. I am going to reopen the continued public hearing on the Sherborn wetland regulations. Discussion of possible amendments. I would like to continue that discussion until later tonight. We don't have much to discuss tonight, but I'd like to continue it until when I see what we have here. Let's continue it to let's see, do that 8:15 tonight. And then we can decide what we can handle then. Do I have a second about continuing this to 8:15?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Sorry, that wasn't
Roll
discussion.
call vote. Michael, aye. Jacob?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Okay. Now I'd like to reopen the continued public hearing for Lot B, Hunting Lane, for construction of a new single-family dwelling with associated driveway, septic, and grading. The applicant has asked to be this continued to the October 5th meeting. I would like to therefore move to continue this hearing to October 5th, and we'll do it at 8 o'clock on October 5th. Okay, that's the schedule. I think it worked out with Joyce. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Jacob?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Okay. Now it's 7:48. We will now have, although we can move it around a little bit, there's a discussion about a small nature preschool class at the Barber Reservation. I see that Sarah is here. Is everybody else that you want here, and you're the, okay, fine. So let us start this discussion right now, a whole minute earlier than planned. And we'll go from there. So you have the floor, and you can introduce who's with you and whatever, and what you're proposing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for allowing us to have a slot on your meeting schedule today. We really appreciate it. I'm Sarah Bessie, one of the co-founders. My co-founder, Shayla Sinelian, is also here. Shayla, if you want to wave. That's Shayla. Our Director of Operations, Chris Cahill, is also here. If you want to wave, Chris. And then we have a few wonderful parents from our program here as well. Juliana. So when we stopped by Barber Reservation and walking around, it was just so incredibly beautiful. It's just a remarkable property. And then we were reading the 2014 Conway report about the property as well, and some of the goals that were stated in that report about balancing the requirements of wildlife, people, and utilities. And it's just such a beautiful landscape that we felt inspired to reach out and ask if we might possibly be able to get permission to run an all-outdoor, 100% outdoor nature preschool on the property for 10 children, ages 2.9 through 5. Our preschool class would operate 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., Monday through Friday. We have a school year program from September through June. We also have a separate summer program in July and August. And the children in our program play and learn all outdoors. So environmental education is a huge focus for us. I noticed that I think it's Carol has trilliums there on her little profile. We love learning about native plants. I know that native plants is a huge focus at Barber Reservation. Planting natives is something we I personally love having, since I used to work at Native Plant Trust. But, you know, teaching children about plants, about animals, about habitats, and giving them an opportunity to experience nature as a young child so that they can fall in love and hopefully one day join this very conservation commission. So that's a little bit about our program. In terms of building requirements, for a half-day preschool class with a cap of 10 children, we would not need any building inspection if we keep the cap at 10 children and if the class is only half day, so going from 9 to 12, a 3-hour program in the morning. However, we would need permission to access some sort of indoor space in case of a true emergency. So basically, an emergency is not just, you know, an everyday occurrence. An emergency is, for example, if a thunderstorm rolled through unexpectedly, we would call the parents to pick up, and then we would need an indoor space to go to for about 10 to 20 minutes until the parents would have a chance to stop by and pick up their child. We noticed a beautiful, lovingly renovated barn on your property. It's so gorgeous. And that would honestly be a perfect spot if we were to run a class there to go in case of emergency. At our Arboretum program over the course of the last school year, our emergency shelter used our emergency shelter, I think, twice in the past school year for periods of time of 15 minutes while we waited for parents to pick up. So we rarely use our emergency shelter, but it is required by Department of Early Education and Care. We are licensed by Department of Early Education and Care, which has 70 pages of regulations, in addition to a separate set of regulations for outdoor preschool specifically that we helped them to write a few years ago. So that's a little bit about the program. In terms of parking, I know that there's not a lot of parking at Barber Reservation. So we would want to have a staggered drop off and a slightly staggered pickup, just to make sure that everyone can get in and out and that there's still enough spots left for members of the general public who might like to park and walk around. So that's a little bit about the program. Shayla, my co-founder, I'm sure, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add. Or any of the parents here.
Sure. Anybody else want to add?
I mean, we do. I mean, we're teachers. We do this type of job because, like, you know, we care about the children. Like Sarah said, like we care about them learning in the environment that we know. Of course, we all love to be on this earth. So one day, like Sarah said, maybe they will be joining you. But we're doing this work. We're providing them the opportunity to be able to just explore outdoors. So.
Well, certainly admirable. Does anybody else wanted to speak at this point?
Yeah, I'll just add. I've been our son Sammy has been using outdoor education for a couple of years, and there's so much science showing that for kids with any kind of special needs, you know, any sort of learning disability or just in general development, it's actually superior to most forms of learning. We've tried Montessori, a lot of things. So I think in terms of, you know, using public open spaces for a really valid way to, you know, enhance people's awareness of it, but also a scientific purpose and the assets that Sherborn has as a town, it's a really valid usage. And I also think it's very low impact. I mean, what I've seen is they're incredibly cautious about preserving the biodiversity of each property, and very valid in that respect. So thanks for considering this.
Sure. Okay. You guys can still speak again after this. I'll just move to I'll move up here to the commission, and then whether other people in the public want to ask or make any comments as well. No, but certainly I appreciate that you appreciate the Barber Reservation so much. So it's nice to hear that. So before I say anything, I'll just let other people comment. Carol, I see people can raise their hands or then talk. Carol?
Yeah, hi. You know, I should mention that when I was the summer after 5th grade, I did a summer camp very much like this. That was at the, I grew up in Weston. It was at the Weston schools. So we spent time in the school and we went out and learned all about nature and bird watching and butterflies. And it was just a wonderful introduction. I think it's just a great idea. I have some questions though about how well suited this site would be for a camp of this kind. Because unlike that, which was at a school which had bathroom facilities and stuff, the Barber doesn't have any of that. So what kinds of facilities would you need in terms of bathrooms, in terms of classrooms? What are the expectations that you would have?
That's a great question. We're completely outdoors, so we don't need any actual indoor classroom. As I mentioned before, we would need access to an emergency shelter very rarely. In terms of toileting, we have a self-contained toilet. It's just an XOXO brand or Potet brand travel potty. It weighs about 1 pound, and we have liners that we use. So it's basically the same as diapers, where a child can just, do their business into the liner, and then we seal it, we put it in a plastic bag, and then we dispose of it off-site. So any trash that we produce needs to be disposed of by Boppin off-site. So we need to leave no trace.
That's great. I guess I'd follow up with a comment, which is that I was on Historical Commission when the Barber Barn was renovated. And at the time we discussed whether to have it kind of compliant with regulations that have to do with public gatherings. And the decision was made to just restore it as close to the original building as possible. So I think one thing that we as a commission would have to figure out is whether the Barber Barn is safe and also compliant for public access, even as an emergency shelter. I know we've used it for brief events. We've used it for the, when we did vernal pool walks. I think, I know, for instance, it has a Fieldstone Foundation. There are mice that get it in and mouse droppings in the main room. So there's some issues, I think, with rodents and could be public health issues. So I don't know. I guess I would suggest that we as a commission have to do some research about that. And we would also need your guidance, Sarah, on what are the expectations for a summer camp like yours, even in using it as an emergency shelter?
Yeah, so there's a lot of regulations if it's considered to be instructional space where children are learning anything. If it's considered to be emergency shelter, that actually falls under a completely separate category, which doesn't really have any regulations. At the Arboretum, we use an awning. At Pine Banks Park in Malden, we use pavilions. So emergency shelters is just a place that you can basically duck into for just a few minutes until parents have a chance to pick up their children. So they're don't have any requirements, unlike the very highly regulated classroom space, which we don't have at all.
Thank you.
So Carol brings up an important point. So I mean, at least in initial conversations with the building inspector, he told us that barn is can be used for storage, and that if we were to use it for anything else, it would require some serious changes. And he said it would be very difficult to bring it up to any kind of compliance.
So if we're operating a class of 10 and under, we would not need to have a building inspection. It's only when you get into those higher numbers that we would need a building inspection. Like Sarah was saying, at the Arnold Arboretum, when Sarah says an awning, it's a 3-foot piece of concrete that juts out over a wall that the kids stand under while we wait for the parents to come pick them up. At Pine Banks Park, it's a pavilion that has a picnic table underneath it with no sides. the requirements are very minimal for the emergency shelter.
Small group of 10 children.
Yeah.
But I guess my question is, if like the town owns this structure and it is for storage, it's a barn. I don't know that the town, you know, would take on a liability to have it used as a shelter when it's really not used to shelter people. I guess I'm struggling to understand. Do you mean like a build? It doesn't need a building inspection, or it doesn't need a school and early learning certification? I mean, because like, what's to say you couldn't use a cave as a shelter? I guess you know what I'm saying. I just don't understand what the minimum requirement is.
So for a building, if we were to be opening like a large group where there would be more than 10 children, like up to 12 children in a class, then it would be considered through the department care of in education, it would be considered as you're opening a large group where you do need a fire inspection, you do need a building inspection, you do need the E-code for education to serve preschoolers, as well as if you were serving like children who are younger, you would need to do to have the I2 and I4 code, as well as you would have to get into all the other inspection, lead inspection as well. But because it is because we are using it as an emergency shelter, it doesn't require that, because it's not a space that the children are continually every day for like an hour, 2 hours. It's just like you're in just to overpass a thunder, and then you're out. So that's why it doesn't require a building inspection or even like an E or I2, I4 code. So I don't know if that answers your questions. So we wouldn't need to go through a whole building inspection, except it's just like, this is an emergency shelter.
You know, I think one thing that I think of when you talk about things like a pavilion or something, I'm sure that if a town puts a pavilion, it does meet certain building codes because the public will have access to it. And unfortunately, this barn was never actually designed to have public access. I think that on our part, we probably do need, Courtney, I think it was great that you talked to the building inspector, but maybe we can go back to him to ask him about group size or anything else that might impact what he's saying.
Well, plus, I'd say, not to pass the buck, but I would think that it really will come down to whether the select board will deal with the town council, just to make sure, since it's a town building,
right?
They feel that in the end we would need to just get their sense that there's not a town liability that they're worried about, that they need to just figure it out. You can work with them, obviously, in terms of this particular issue, but I think that's where I don't think we're gonna be able to make the decision. Plus, there's also the option of whether what it means. I don't know what to even just use the downstairs part, that they're not even on the floor, on the first floor. That there's, but I think that is something that I guess I feel as a conservation commission and sort of managing town property, that we would have to get the town itself to sort of to approve that they don't mind that use. I'm not sure it's our place that we can decide that here, and I think that's and I have no idea. I mean, even with the building commission, the building inspector, that it really comes back to, does the town's going to want it before? Because I assume you have some sort of, is there some sort of a document that gets signed as sort of like some sort of memorandum of understanding or some sort of agreement that you sign with an entity that would have to get reviewed in any case and approved by town council and the town administrator or the select board. That's something that I guess you'd have to submit for, if going further, that should just be something we submit together with this issue, so that they could get sorted out at a higher level than us in a way. I think is where I'm leaning on that issue, and plus the whole agreement itself, that would have to go through. So that's it. So that whole issue, I guess maybe we just have to hold off on.
I think to some extent, though, maybe we're also feeling out the interest of the commission and any concerns that they might want to address before we, take it further to the next level. So, obviously we'd want to figure out whether the barn was actually a viable option. Whether obviously we need to get the building commissioners buy-in on that process. I think one question that would come up, because this would be allowing a private entity to have kind of like year-round use of public lands, and I think I think outdoor education is great. But as you mentioned, there is not a lot of parking there. So probably, like you said, there'd have to be some plan for how many parking spaces would be in use. I don't know if there would be a traffic question, because it's really not not a huge parking area for drop off, and it's just a couple of kids, but some kind of, you mentioned some kind of staggered plan. I think those are the main questions I would have. I don't know if other commissioners have questions.
I guess I see somebody said, I guess I'm curious, are you a nonprofit or a for-profit entity?
We're a nonprofit organization. 30% of children are either on full scholarship or partial scholarship. And we have a few programs that are tuition free as well.
Mm-hmm.
We also accept state vouchers. And we also have a public partnership with Boston Public Schools in Rosendale as well.
Nice. I guess, Alessandra, you wanted to say something? Speak.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like the moment has passed, but I raised my hand earlier, so I just.
It's all right. Sorry about that.
I know. I'll say there's exciting things happening on that side of the laptop screen, and so I think I missed a moment. I felt like I heard that the building in question. I'm not questioning any of like the vetting or validation or certification that you want to do, but I felt like I heard earlier. Could you repeat for me how the building is currently used and whether people currently access the building, or when people currently access the building that's on site?
I think I probably mentioned that right now the building it's really not used by the public at all. We use it to store some things related to management of the Barber's native plant garden, and we've over several years ago, before COVID, we had 2 vernal pool walks, and we had a very brief discussion beforehand. People gathered outside and we had a quick discussion. It took maybe 15 minutes. So the public was in the building for that long, and then we left. And that's really the total extent of it that I know of since I've been on this commission. And also I was previously on historical commission. I know in the time I was, it wasn't used then.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting issue. I wasn't fully aware of its condition, what limited use, and so we have to, hasn't really been used essentially, and maybe if it has, maybe for one occasion, maybe it shouldn't have been used given the issue. So
yeah,
so I'll say that we have to be more conservative about what we think of for some other uses there, given what I've subsequently learned myself. So so that past use is somewhat, not sure how relevant it is to the discussion now, but it's still a matter of that we have to go sort that out a little bit at another level. But I guess, as Courtney said, we're just trying to get the list of issues here, and to what extent it goes, to what extent we have to weigh in now fully, or whether it's done in parallel with pursuing the issue with our select board, who owns the land really in the building.
Michael, I should mention when we did those walks, we actually did have a form that people signed to, a waiver.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the question, is whether that waiver was fine, whether we would want to do that again or not. I guess it would be interesting to ask town council and the select board about whether that's something that is sufficient even going forward, is the way I feel about that at the moment. What were you going to say, Sarah? You were going to have your hand raised?
Yeah, I mean, another option to consider is that if the beautiful renovated barn, if that's going to be too complicated, we could also just put up a 16-foot yurt on the property near the parking lot, very close to the road. And that could technically be considered an emergency shelter. So it meets the state child care licensing regulations. Or a pavilion, either a yurt or a pavilion, both count as an emergency shelter. And, if it's a pavilion, it could also then be used by members of the general public or other uses as well. At Pine Banks Park, we're welcome to use the pavilions, but the entire general public is also very welcome to use the same pavilions.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's something that the commission would see as a property improvement, to have a little gathering space there next to the parking lot.
I mean, a place for that actually would probably be kind of behind the Barber barn. There's a level area. The barn used to have animals, I think, in the bottom. And so there's a big double door and kind of a level area there, which would maybe be a good place for some kind of platform or something.
Okay, so coming around, so maybe there's ways to deal with this emergency thing and other ways to pursue it. And so in terms of concerns, there's the parking one, and it's the drop off and pickup. Right, and I guess, right, it's allowing a regular, we've never confronted this kind of request on any of our properties that we manage. So this is something new for us to go about. I mean, it certainly sounds like a very worthwhile activity. And we always, these kind of activities like this that are one-off or even for a week or so are always wonderful. The idea of having something that's almost year-round on a regular basis is sort of a whole other scale than I've ever thought about for this kind of for our one of our properties. So I'm not quite sure. I appreciate that it's certainly a nonprofit, and some of the sort of what might want to call sort of a justice issue in terms of who gets to attend, which is an important issue to me, and in general, it's getting at least finally a little more recognition. So I appreciate that personally as one member. And I'm trying to wrap my brain around what other issues we have in terms of how to move this forward.
I would say if we were one of those towns that had more facilities, like, if we had like a nature center or something like that, I think this would be a no-brainer. It's just most of our conservation parcels are just there. Nothing attached.
We get a little more utilization. It's not like, I don't think it's not like it's so used to the point where that this would maybe change the nature.
No, I'm saying if we had more infrastructure, this would be no brainer, because we'd probably have a little pavilion with a bathroom or something. It would be so easy to say yes.
I don't know what to think about the situation. I mean, we certainly have more than probably a dozen dogs that go in there in terms of competing use for the waste management. But we want, Steve, you were going to say something?
One just nuts and bolts thing is where when parents pick them up, where are they coming from? Far away, close by?
Sherborn. Tim and Juliana here are Sherborn residents. And just the surrounding towns in addition to Sherborn. Yeah.
Okay, and someone else want to add something?
No, I was just saying it's hard to predict until you start enrolling families. It's hard to predict where they're going to be coming from, what their financial needs are until we kind of reach that point. I mean, at our Pine Banks location, we're looking at about 70% are on financial aid. Same with our Delford Street location. So it really depends, when we get to that point and start enrolling and getting inquiries about enrollment.
Okay, I assume if some parents lived in Boston, that there would be maybe Sherborn or more local parents, or there'd be some system to get them. Does that sound hearing?
Mm-hmm.
See Sarah here nodding, so that wouldn't be an issue in itself. Now, obviously, I think it's trying to support outdoor education or education outdoors. I don't know if they're quite the same thing. Is great. And it seems like there's a bunch of things we can't answer tonight. So I don't think it means that we don't like the ideas and the concepts. I think we just have to work through some things, and we don't have the jurisdiction to even say yes or on a lot of things. Is that correct, commissioners?
I guess I would say that the commission is in the position to make a recommendation to the select board. And that would probably be the appropriate thing, that we basically, say in principle, if these issues can be ironed out, we think it's a good idea, or we don't think it's a good idea. There are a bunch of issues, though, that would need to be ironed out. And so I think it would make sense to think those through and then go back to the select board with whatever recommendation that we have.
So my based on listening to this, I support the general notion of sort of letting these classes happen. As long I think a few things we'd want to figure out are making sure that it doesn't affect the use of the reservation by the general public, and that sounds like a solvable. It doesn't sound like there's an obvious issue there. Same thing with parking. It sounds like parking and drop-offs and pickups. That sounds solvable. I think the shelter sounds tricky. I'm doubtful that the barn would end up being usable for that purpose, just based on liability questions and and allowing public access. In principle, having a pavilion on the site somewhere near the parking lot, like with a pad and a picnic table, sounds like it would be an improvement, but I don't know the history. I don't actually know if that would be a suitable use given how the reservation was set up. So that would take some research, and it would obviously be expensive to construct. But that seems like it would be a better approach than a temporary structure, which does not sound like it would be an improvement to the site.
I think in the past we've discouraged picnic type arrangements there because the town did not want to have to deal with picking up garbage. So
yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So I think if we were to go toward this idea of some kind of pavilion, it would probably be something very simple, some very simple shelter.
Just thinking outside the box about this scenario, what I've seen in other national parks is a kind of lean-to, it's not a pavilion, but it's more of a lean-to with a sloped roof, but inside you have information about the history of Barber Reservation, the wildlife, plants, but it serves a dual purpose of being an emergency shelter, but also an information point.
Well, that's an interesting idea.
Interesting idea.
Yeah.
There already is a sign. There already is something. It doesn't have a lean-to. It doesn't have a shelter, but there's a
kiosk.
Display kiosk, right?
Right.
So it sounds like we're headed in the direction of people are generally open to this idea, but there's just a few things that would need to be ironed out. And I mean, also just given that it's, that it's a town parcel, I generally the town wants to have input on those kinds of things. So certainly like a more publicized discussion should probably take place, because things generally backfire if there isn't ample opportunity for everyone in town to express their opinions on things, even things that you think are just like, oh, this is fantastic, like everybody's gonna love this. Everybody has to put in their 2 cents. So it's definitely something, I think, unless you want to run into trouble down the road, we'd want to have like, you know, not at formal hearing, but just say, you know, this is open for discussion. Like, we want to hear the public's opinion. Don't you think, Michael?
Oh yeah, no, I think it should be, I mean, as Carol said, we can make our sort of recommendation and or sort of our concerns and issues, but basically it would probably be a decision that we would want for a use of this scale and regularity, that we'd want the select board, which we're a creature of. We're just appointed members, whereas they're elected. That at the select board level, they could get whatever that legal review, and they would have to be the one probably to sign any kind of agreement anyway. And so it's going to probably be essentially a vote of the select board approving that somebody can sign the agreement, and so basically getting that agreement together. But as at the first level here, whether us as 5 commissioners of the 7 here, and I guess I would feel like what Jacob says, that right, subject to all those things getting figured out that we've talked about tonight, that in principle, it seems like it would be a wonderful little exciting opportunity. I mean, it's there's a part of me that's right. Gives a little life to a place to have a bunch of kids running around. I think other people would enjoy even witnessing that's around there, as long as the kids get along with all the dog walking that goes there and the occasional horse that rides around there, that we just watch out for interspecies dynamics that are an issue anyway with people sharing that property between. We struggle with people with motorbikes and other kind of things there that were and different uses of the property that were there. Are often some conflicts that we have to balance, and people have to get along.
To be clear, we don't allow motorbikes, but they get it.
Yes. So
on the subject of horses and dogs, we have coexisted at the Arnold Arboretum with dogs and I guess police horses, really, not general.
Yeah, Austin's father rides a horse. Yeah.
So,
maybe there are more dogs in the Arboretum, so actually maybe a little more density issue.
There might be, yeah.
Oh, are there? Are they required? So one thing to say is that they are not required to be leashed in Sherborn. They're to be under the control of the owner, but that doesn't require a leash. It could be voice control. So just kind of on a side note, just so you're aware.
And I guess you do this through the winter time. Just the whole.
That's the whole point of it. Outdoor preschool.
And so okay, so in the wintertime, snow or whatever, I guess you don't have snow days. That could be interesting. And I guess right, we'll have to deal with. Actually, one of the issues might be how that parking lot is managed for snow removal. Might be a little logistical issue to keep in mind. Now that bring it up, because I think it's sort of low on the totem pole of places that get plowed, and how much you can navigate the issue of the fact that there's Stevens Lane across the street from that area, where a lot of overflow parking happens in general. I mean, then there's a traffic and safety thing because there's no crosswalk formally set up there. That is done there. So yeah, so I would say that parking thing, yeah, that winter parking would be something that obviously everybody would want to make sure that there's some way, and obviously you would care even more than others about the fact that that is workable for the drop-offs. And I guess
yeah. On that note, I think sometimes having a delayed pickup can be helpful on those days, or merely to just cancel on days when the parking lot is not accessible.
yeah, as long as you can, that'll be your logistical nightmare of figuring that out and how to deal with parents who are like, what?
Well, the thing about it, I think, is that, Sarah, it's a gravel parking lot, and sometimes in the winter, it's like, I'm not sure they plow it. Like there could be days on end when it's not accessible. So I'm not sure. I mean, I drive by that a lot, but in the winter, I don't always try to go into it. So we'd have to find out about that.
We'd have to think about it. I recall the fact that I actually once got stuck in there. I had to get a ride home and get some shovels and stuff, sand and whatever else to get into my car to get it out. Not that I have a great car, but so yes, because it's down from the road. And so
we need to put that on the list of things to think about, but it doesn't necessarily change the bigger picture at the moment.
All right. Okay. So as a group of us commissioners, I guess we're assuming all these other things that we've just talked about can all be solved to everybody's liking, and that it's a decision that goes forward with the select board, and they deal with the agreement, which of course they'll deal with the liability stuff. That I guess in principle we're all amenable to this, and that it's worth exploring the next steps of talking with the select board, or at least the town administrator, I guess would be the gateway for doing that. I don't know. Have you had any contact with the town administrator at all, or on this?
I sent it to him, but we didn't really get into the details. I just gave him a heads up. So
okay. I guess we should I don't know whether the next step is whether we meet with the town administrator and Sarah or somebody, or a couple of you, whether we just introduce you guys and express what some of the discussion was tonight, and see how he suggests the next steps. Does that seem like a reasonable plan at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have your contact information, Sarah, and then you in turn have everybody else's. We will broach this with the town administrator and see what the next steps could be. In the meanwhile, you might, to the extent that you have any information that is sort of already prepared about some of these issues, as well as what an agreement would look like, whether you even want to send that to us and we could share it with him, or you could send it to him, whatever you could send to us, and we could pass it on as part of that there. And whether there's any other, right, I don't necessarily mean that you have to prepare anything special at this point, as opposed to whether you already have self-prepared stuff that we could share with him, and in preparation for us talking together.
Yeah, we typically have a very short and simple memorandum of understanding with our site partners for our half-day classes. So we would be happy to just use our boilerplate template and modify it for Barber reservation and send you a draft of that to review.
Sure. And any other thoughts you want to put on paper beforehand based on this discussion, or because all of this will come up with him and eventually with the select board, who's going to probably have to essentially authorize him to sign that thing, because we normally would not be, we're not allowed to sign that kind of thing. So that'll be the sense of where this goes, and they can deal with talking, and to some extent he can decide how to deal with that whole issue of the building inspector or what part of the property gets used. I mean, I think the underside of the barn, I still find, I'm not sure what's down there, whether that's still a different kind of option. But yeah, it'll be the public discussion too about the fact that this is a more organized use of our town property, which we've not had here to date. But being what kind of an issue it is, seems like an exciting opportunity. So we'll leave it at that. Anything else? Okay. Thank you for your time. And we will inch forward on this thing here, because I guess your goal is for where are we now? Okay. You're aiming for September as a possible window, I guess.
I mean, honestly, in our ideal world, the spring would be really ideal.
Okay.
As the weather warms up, late March, early April start date would be ideal for us.
Okay, so we have some time to work this out and to see that there. Okay, good.
Yeah, so it's the town first, and then on our side, it's the licensing. So it's probably barely enough time.
Okay.
But anyway.
We will see how this
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for the idea and presenting and being here today, and we'll be in touch then. So send us stuff and we'll try to coordinate that discussion going forward.
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye. Let's see.
Didn't quite make it till 9 yet.
I know. We're gonna
another continued hearing to resume.
Yes, exactly. Well, we also have our regs thing that we continue again. I'm gonna and then we have some other items on our agenda here, discussion items. So we have time, we have things to do. I am now going to reopen the Sherborn wetlands regulations one that we continued to 8:15. The status of that is that we're still waiting for Matt to do a review of the draft that we had, and also whether all of you can give your other look at that new draft. I'm still I still am partially through a draft that I have to give on all the other stuff that's beyond this performance standards for the buffer zone. So there's still a whole other set of things that we had discussed earlier that I want to clean up and be able to put forth. But these things take time. And so I am going to say that hearing that unless somebody has reviewed the draft and has any specific comments, I'm going to suggest that we continue the hearing to the next one and see whether we can get Matt's comments as well as I can get some other work done. Does anybody have any specific comments on the current draft that's in the folder? Or if not, I will just continue the hearing.
I do not have any comments.
Okay, hearing that, I am going to, based on the schedule that I worked out with Joyce, I'm going to continue this hearing to October 5th at 7:45.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Okay, we've done that. Now, we have a couple of discussion items for tonight.
Are we gonna do the 5 minutes?
Whoa. Yes, that's what I'm
I'm
doing.
really excited for that.
I know, that's what I was about to do.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to make Courtney's day or night.
For year?
For a year. We have a bunch of minutes that we're still working on for 2023. But during the transition period, there was one set of minutes left from 2022. We have the May 5th of 2022 minutes, of which 3 of us were there for. And 3 of us have all reviewed the document. Since we're not a quorum, we've all reviewed it and come to agreement on those set of minutes.
And now the commission has to decide if they believe us.
Right. And now I would suggest that I don't have to put it up on the screen and subject the 2 other members to reading something that they were not there for, unless they would like to do that. I could bring it up on the screen, or else I was suggesting that we vote on the minutes as we've already been, I guess I should put it up as the.
Yeah, why don't you put it up? Let's not break our routine, even if we just skim it.
Okay, sure.
While you do that, I just want to say thank you to Carol for supplying her notes. I'm glad that you hoarded those because there weren't a lot of things to go off of for that meeting.
Yeah, luckily I was on it.
Yeah. Well, I know around that time you had taken minutes for several meetings, and I think you were actually off the hook for this set, but you took notes anyway. So
yeah.
So you get the award.
Yeah, that was cool.
Okay, here's the set of minutes that the 3 of us have reviewed and agreed to. I'm more than happy to let the rest of you read this. If you, Jacob and Steve, would like to, or we can proceed and without that. What do the 2 of you feel? And I think a 3-0-2 abstain vote qualifies as approval. Does that make sense to everybody?
I'm happy to go down the abstain route, as long as that as long as that still works.
Okay, I think that does work because that's a majority of the quorum. It's a quorum. It's a majority of what's at the meeting here. Does that make sense to you, Courtney?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I can send it to you so you can read on your own, unless you want to read it now, Steve, or just do the abstain route.
I'll read it as you're going, but I'll do the abstain route anyways. So go ahead.
Okay. I move to approve the May 5th, 2002 minutes as presented here and as edited.
2022.
2022. Sorry, whatever I said.
I just noticed the typo. Did we spell Cindy's last name wrong? Isn't that an I at the end?
Oh, very good.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know how I just noticed that. So
it was very good.
I'm sorry. Were you making a motion?
That's all right. I will take it back. We will start all over again.
Oh no. What have I done?
Does this mean we need to read this anymore, or are we gonna?
No. It was just right there in front of me.
Okay. I move that. I'll start all over again. I move that we approve these May 5th, 2022 minutes as presented and edited.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Steve?
Abstain.
Jacob?
Abstain.
Okay.
On this momentous occasion.
We have completed all of our 2022 minutes. Finally, now we got to really plow through more of the current ones, which is in progress.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I got that saved. I'm going to stop share. Okay, I'm going to move on to
Carol.
I'm going to move on to we did minutes. We don't have any announcements. Commission membership. As I brought up last time, at some point in the near future, Carol will no longer be serving on the commission due to a move. And the town has advertised that there will be an opening in the future for the Conservation Commission. And what we have here tonight is somebody who's interested in serving. We have here who's, I think, going to become, oh, there she is. She's now a real person, a real image. Terry Luskin has expressed interest in serving on this, and is, I guess, as I gather, she could talk about her interest in this, but I gather she's actually looked at some of our meetings. She's been attending this one from the beginning, and she actually seems to have read our regulations, I gather. And,
some of them, yes.
And she happens to be I guess, a master gardener. And so she will certainly do well on helping us with that. And oh, yes, and she is also a graduate of Smith College. So that'll become the majority. Oh, no, actually, it'll compete with another college that has a couple of members on the commission as well. So as I just learned recently. I can't tell the anecdote, but I can't resist, given that I talk too much, that I was reading my alumni news magazine, and I was looking at my class notes, and I saw a note from somebody saying, blah, 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 Strauss was writing about his project he was doing on his house, that he lived in Sherborn. And I'm like, wow, he lives in Sherborn. He's in my class. And then he says, and my son just lives up the street. And it turns out to be Jacob's father. So it was I got a chuckle.
That's how you found out? You didn't know about that before?
I didn't know about it before. Maybe I should have known and I just forgot.
I threw out my alumni magazine. I don't count because I did my postdoc there. So
a smithy is a smithy. Must say it.
Okay, so the alumni part of 3, we'll leave it at 2 to 2 then.
Well, I also want to bring up that Terry was a math teacher. Her career was being a math teacher, which I think is a great mindset to have when you're joining Conservation Commission, is to have that logical mindset that understands how rules work. So Terry, I think I'm very pleased that you'll be stepping into my shoes, and I'm sad to actually be leaving town once my house is sold, but hopefully I'll still see people because we're not going to
so.
Yeah. So, okay, on that note, I'll let Terry, if you want to say a few words.
Yeah, I the amusing part is I taught at Dover Sherborn High School for 20 years in the math department, and retired at the end of June of 2019. Just in time to miss yes, just in time to miss all the mayhem of the COVID years at the high school level, which were such a challenge for the students and a challenge for the staff. And we seem to still have administrators who survived the whole experience. But it's how I came. Oops, I'm sorry, I've tapped my video off. It's how we came to know Sherborn. And we moved here about 3 years ago from Needham, and we're looking to downsize and sort of find our home for the decades. I'm going to stick to that part for the decades ahead. And we're about to do. We were actually on your docket a few times this year for the AA approval to do a really deep gut renovation of our house, which we're hoping to embark on soon. So there just seemed to be the continuity between the certified master gardener part, and I'm sort of a detail girl.
Oh boy.
In many ways, but you can't be a teacher and not be able to keep the 1,000-foot view as well. So I hope I can bring that sort of the minutia as well as the big picture, and learn what I need to learn to eventually become a commissioner. But Carol's been kind enough to give me her binder of the MAC sort of printed material. And so I'll hope to dive into that right quick, as the saying goes.
Wow.
Who has a question? I'm so curious to know what brought you all here.
Well, usually it's you get reeled in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I showed up to a meeting once because there was a project going on and they were just like, who is this? Somebody came to a meeting. Let's recruit them.
Mm-hmm. And I live surrounded by wetlands.
Yeah.
Did my own notice of intent. But no, it was almost 20 years ago. And learned a lot, and I certainly learned a lot about wetlands. Had my first set of plans rejected because I was too much in the inner buffer zone. So went through. So I've seen the tough times of what it means to try to do stuff here. And but yes, experiencing my own wetlands and learning about it certainly was part of my interest in all of this. And since we also do open space, it was nice to be able to participate in that part of it too, since that's part of what got us to move here, unlike other towns in the area. So that's my 2 cents. But
Steve, are you a long-term resident and involved in local committees and government, or?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, prior to Conservation Commission, I served on Farm Pond Advisory Committee for a number of years. And I do have some training in freshwater ecology, so that was a good fit, except for a lot of what talked about was rules on the beach and things like that. So I also lifelong interest in field natural history, taught science, including ecology, environmental courses. And so it's just part of, I don't know, sort of my both professional and personal identity to think about conservation issues.
Okay.
What else can I let you know, Jacob? I don't know if you want to toss in here, but
so I got, as Courtney said, I also got roped into the notion via some friends in town, and so I don't have any other background on town committees or anything like that, but we've been here for 6 years. And I just joined the Conservation Commission last year, and so still in the learning how things work phase, I'd say.
So am I, Jacob. So am I. I don't know how I'm still learning how things work.
All right, it's always new stuff, I guess. Jacob got roped in because his wife is a professor of biology, and then somebody told me about her. I was trying to get at her, and she then passed it on to him. So, it was kind of a funny chain of events, I guess, to get him here.
Tag, darling, you're it.
Right. Yes. I can't do Thursday nights. My husband can.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
So,
well, as far as the meetings go, it fits in my calendar. I talking about being reeled in a little bit. I was tapped to become clerk for the Mass Master Gardeners starting in January, so I had a little silent giggle at the minutes being revisited and so forth. So because I sort of spend a lot of time in that little trench of doing the recording and sending them around and all the things. So
you'll have fun reviewing our minutes.
I have one small thing to add.
Yeah, sure.
Daughter's a Smith alum, but my wife's a Mount Holyoke alum. So
wow.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Siblings, yes, indeedy.
we're taking over the world.
Okay, there we go.
Because we get lost.
You could have the world. I mean, hopefully you can make it better, but good luck. But okay. One issue is whether, since Terry seems to be getting into this and whatnot, and has some aptitude for this and background, whether it's the kind of thing, whether we want to consider, if she's interested, in the meanwhile, during this transition period, whether we make her a conservation associate, whether if she's open to that, as well as whether it's an idea that what the rest of you think about. I guess I should ask her first, and then I'll ask, or maybe I should have asked her separately.
No, I'd be happy to be, the journeyman learning associate member and just zip it and watch how sort of the analytic piece plays out.
Oh, you wouldn't zip it. I mean, basically we'd involve you as much as you want to be. It just your votes wouldn't legally count. That's all. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the way I did it. I spoke up. I went to meetings beforehand and just.
Michael, I'm shocked to hear that.
Exactly.
That you spoke up.
You betcha. I figured if they couldn't deal with me as an associate, I don't think I was an associate, but they couldn't deal with me then. But then again, there's not a lot of people are just happy to have somebody.
But a lot of members have started as associates, and it's nice because it's kind of like, you get an opportunity to learn a little bit before you're on the line. And I did want to mention to you that I just put into the chat. I thought this is kind of amazing that the next thing that MACC seems to have as a webinar is the overview of conservation commissions. And I put a link in the chat for you, Terry, because
thanks. I'm gonna see if I can copy that because sometimes Zoom won't let you. So
I'll send it.
You have to click on it and then open
it and save it from there
separately. Yeah.
You can't copy it otherwise.
I think that one thing that's nice is, probably it'll take, less than 2 months for me to get to the point where I have to leave, but that will give you a couple months to start understanding what we're doing and attend some meetings, and then also start attending the MACC classes, because they're really the best way to learn about what it is to be a conservation commissioner.
Absolutely.
If you're interested, we can do that. I do want to put the qualifier out there that we don't select the membership of the commission, because that's done by the select board. You have to go apply to them, and we can make our suggestions to them, or recommendations, but it's an open process that that the select board runs, with that caveat. Well, if you're game and if the commissioners are game, I guess I would like to make a motion to appoint you as a conservation associate. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion or other people's thoughts about that, since I didn't hear others? Okay. In that case, I'll do a roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Carol? Aye.
Okay, welcome partially aboard.
Thank you so much. One toe on the gunnel. Okay.
Yeah. Right, and you know where to find us, and we welcome you to the meetings. And as others said, feel free to chime in and ask questions too.
Great.
Okay, it's a
If
pleasure.
it's all right with you, I'm going to go back on mute and turn the video off and just listen to the rest of the meeting.
Okay, we have 5 minutes before we have to remember to continue the next hearing. The other last agenda item here is we have to start thinking more about the comments that we need to make to the conservation, to the discussion of the 40B project Farm Road Homes, and working on any comments and that we want to make to the ZBA as part of their comprehensive permit process. That'll be ongoing for another number of months. But it's part of there. I'm not sure if I think we let Bob Murchison, the project developer, know that we were going to be talking about it tonight. I'm not quite sure if he is. I see, imagine Brian Moore is here for that. I don't know who iPhone 253 is. But Bob said that he also has stuff at the select board, so he might not be able to make it here. Based on some of our discussion last time, and just in general, I sent an email this week to the ZBA, just asking for access to the peer reviewer who's doing the stormwater work, so that we can go over how they're approaching that with regard to, and specifically to deal with the fact that obviously they're doing the standard, bad word, use the word, they're doing the work on whether it meets the stormwater standards. The DEP stormwater standards is what they normally do. There's the 8 or 9 standards. And so given the issues these days with flooding, but in particular, I brought up in the email the issues of wanting to be careful about, understand exactly how they're going to handle 2 particularly important issues for us that are special to this one. The one is about the isolated land subject to flooding, that pond, and addressing its carrying capacity for stormwater control, and that given whatever changes are being made to the land around it and to the basin itself for that particular wetland resource, that I wanted to talk to them about how they were going to handle that. And the second item in particular was the stormwater connection that they have on the plan that goes from the some sort of tension basin along Farm Road that uses a stormwater easement through the neighboring property at 53, I think it is, the new house, and that empties out at the buffer zone for wetlands to the west there on the other side of that property, and to make sure that we are understanding better and that it's scrutinized, that connection and how that fits with the wetland regulations at the state level. So that were the 2 main examples, but that's so that we could have access to them. And I also asked them what they're dealing with at the next meeting on October 5th. I don't think they're doing stormwater, but I'm not sure when they're, sometime soon they will be doing stormwater. So that's what I did since then. The other issues for so in terms of our actually, before I go into opening up the next set of things here, I'm going to say it's 9 o'clock here, which it is. I am now going to, we continue this discussion in a bit. I am now going to reopen the continued public hearing for 60, the NOI. Actually, it's put wrong in our agenda. It's called an RDA, but it's really a notice of intent. I'm reopening the public hearing for 60 Washington. Oh, no. Oh, actually, it is an RDA. Excuse me. I'm getting confused. Reopening the hearing for the request for determination of applicability for 60 Washington Street. That is where we were. Well, we don't have to discuss it. The applicant is unable to attend tonight, so we're continuing the hearing to to our next meeting. We have permission for them to do that. So I am now going to move to continue the hearing on 60 Washington Street to 7:20 on October 5th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Okay. Fine. Now we can move back to before we continue on the Farm Road thing, I kind of quickly just do one thing that I just don't want to forget to do. The only other item on our agenda is the administrative approvals. This only takes less than a minute. I just want to read into the record that there are 5 administrative approvals that I assume are all outside of our jurisdiction. There is 27 Curve Street for an addition. There is 59 Spywood Road, an update on a septic system. 32 Saddlebrook Road, an update of a septic system. 14 Forest Street is a septic system. And 20 Morse Road is a front porch and expanded deck. All, I believe, are outside of jurisdiction and have received administrative approvals. Okay, that's the only other item. Okay, let's go back to 40B Farm Road. I don't know whether to just, I might just pull up the plan to see and move forward here. I guess there's one other topic after I pull the plan up here. Let's see. I think this is it. Okay. Okay, I will zoom in at some point here. One other issue that I want to bring up that, oops, too big. One other issue that I want to say has been brought up at the last ZBA meeting, to which our standing is unclear, is that there was discussion. I can't remember if I brought this up at the last meeting even. There's discussion of the fact that this property over here is town-owned property that was deeded to the Conservation Commission and has I guess was just simply deeded to the Conservation Commission to keep in a natural, undeveloped state in perpetuity. What came up at the at the ZBA meeting is a deed issue that is, I guess, hasn't been fully sorted out, where this property that the town owns here is one of 3 lots. This is 1, this is roughly 2, and some part of this used to be 1. And that they have something new to me, but I'm not that I would be familiar with. They have in the deeds for these for original deeds, there is the fact that these properties are supposed to be single family and mostly left in not subdivided and left in a natural state. But that deed restriction is subject to being enforced by any of the other of the 3. so that basically that deed restriction is in place for some debatable length of time, and that came up, it was unclear, and that it was basically to sort of enforce that any of those restrictions, if they're still in place, would be on one of the three parties to request that stay in place if those restrictions still exist. That is going to be a legal issue that I'm not sure how the ZBA is going to tackle it, and that it's also a subject of for the select board to decide, because the select board really, even though the property was deeded to Conservation Commission, from what I can understand, which will get clarified at some point, that it's owned by the town, and that the town would have to be the one to exercise that deed restriction if it's still even in place. So that's something that's just ongoing, that we don't know fully what our standing is as a Conservation Commission, and that the select board is working on that issue with the ZBA at that point, as well as some of the interested neighbors have raised these considerations. But at this point, it seems like we'll try to get clarification, but at this point, it's not clear whether there's anything for us as Conservation Commission to do other than to request from the select board that they make clear what it is, if there is a role for us.
Michael, one thing I wonder about that is, yeah, I mean, do they want any kind of recommendation from us? Because, you know, I think it's been clear to us from the beginning that there are issues with this site that relate to, you know, things like that pond and to what degree it's flooding, and then also the proximity to a very big wetland complex. And
yeah, but I want to keep this deed issue separate. I'd like to come back to those issues, but this.
Well, I'm just asking. I don't think we've given. I think early on I gave some feedback about the connectivity to adjacent wetlands and so forth, but is ZBA asking for any kind of input from us about an argument for enforcing this deed restriction to keep it as single family lots, or, you know, what we think the
you have to ask ZBA,
will be?
As I understanding, we have to wait for the select board because the land is owned by the select board. And
So they're not asking us for some input.
Well, we will ask them if they want input, basically. We will be asking them if they want input or how they what our standing is at this point on that.
Okay.
So on that, simply on that deed issue at this point, we have to hear from the select board. And we have to ask the select board about what role we might play in that, or that we can play in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's up in the air at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all that I think I need to say about that deed issue, or that at this point here. I see, Brian, you've raised your hand. Is that about the deed issue or something else? If it's not about the deed issue.
No, it's about the deed issue. And can I comment for just very briefly?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Brian Moore, 49 Farm Road. That's my house on the left side of your screen there. The thing I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of is it's not 3 lots. It's actually 4 lots that were part of what an attorney calls a common scheme. And I think that needs to be, the record should reflect that there were 4 lots involved in the common restrictions, which is a higher level of restriction than a 3-lot issue. And I just wanted to make sure that was in the record. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry, I misspoke. There's 3A and 3B. That's why I was misspeaking possibly. Okay, well, we'll try to get some clarification on what our role can or might be. So moving on from that, in terms of issues that we would have to bring up to the ZBA, because they're acting on behalf of us under the bylaw. the things that we would have to, trying to go back to my, the pond issue, okay, of the ones the ones that we brought up before, the pond issue, and this, I guess I don't have the best plan here, because here's where there's an easement on some other plan, as it shows more of the I guess I'm not gonna spend the time to go. Let's see if the existing site plan are proposed.
Michael, have you written something up already, did you say?
No, that's what we have to do a draft for the next meeting.
Okay.
I guess this has a little bit more detail here. Just want to go over where we were and, whoops. I guess sorry about that. Okay. I guess this shows some of the riprap and things there, as well as that there seems to be some sort of, so those two issues about the possible stormwater connection with the wetlands over here, as well as the carrying capacity of how they're dealing with this is isolated land subject to flooding, which is a state level issue. That we'll deal with the stormwater review. In terms of the other issues we came up with, that I guess I think it's just a matter of, we do have the concerns here, and I'm not sure that there's much more given what we know from the past, that other than bringing up the fact that we're always concerned about a large septic system that is up gradient of wetlands and what it might mean there. We don't have much regulatory impact on that, even under our bylaw, but except for the fact that there's a little bit of grading here. That I think I would just say that it's a concern, to the extent that it dovetails with other concerns that the ZBA might find. They could use that as something that maybe as a whole might make some issue, whether there's any project issues that they come up with from other angles. That I think the best we can say there is that it's a concern for possible contamination of wetland and groundwater, but that there's nothing we can say beyond that. It's only, as we learned last time, if we ever found a problem down there, then it would have to be a subject of enforcement order. So on the septic, we could just make a general comment. On the area here, we have a buffer zone around this. And right now there is going to be in the buffer zone a significant amount of, the state doesn't have it. There's a significant amount of activity in the outer buffer zone. They've essentially roughly stayed out of the inner buffer zone. But there's a grading here and a basin in the road. Looks like most of this is, a lot of this is sort of some sort of grading. And here, I don't know whether something to talk about or whether to bring up that in this area. I mean, normally we would be pushing to have less development in the outer buffer zone or some mitigation for that. I'll just throw out the idea just to focus on this thing here, that however, this area that's graded here, that it's, and whether these basins here, whether they basically are done more as whether do it more as they can do it as rain gardens, and that whether the way this is all landscaped here is, I guess I would think of asking that the ZBA And we can get some advice, maybe working with Joyce as well as the peer reviewer, whether these, I guess, something to bring up for stormwater, that whether these could be, rather than just riprap, whether they can be rain gardens that are more greatly vegetated, and that the kind of vegetation of these graded areas that are outside of what they want to do as landscaping is wetland, sort of wetland buffer zone friendly. So I would like to think we could come up with some recommendations as to the how this is vegetated and how the basins are handled. As to the properties here where they actually want to do landscaping and they have buildings in the road, I guess it would be a matter of the runoff. I mean, I would like to think that for landscaping in areas around here in the buffer zone, that there's no use of chemicals. That there's no chemical use, even though it's very limited. And and I don't know whether there's some, normally we'd say for mitigation, taking this area, or there's some other site here, but there's no other buffer zone really that they're doing much on, other than whether. So I'm not sure what to ask or what to suggest for that kind of buffer zone disturbance. So there's a significant square footage here, but small compared to the total project.
Michael, you know, one thing we did for the fields of Sherborn is we did ask actually for the size of the project to be reduced in order to, in that case, we were trying to get them to stay out of the 50, but I think it's not inappropriate to say that the size of the project could be reduced to stay out of the 100. Why not begin with that statement?
Sure, we can make that as okay, we could just make that as a statement. Fine. That's just a simple statement. And I don't see there. As to other things that we might want to, I mean, I don't mean to be dismissive of it, other than the fact that I imagine it's going to be a little tricky for them to do that, but I still agree with you that it's something we can make as a statement.
Right.
As to any other kind of conditioning, I don't know whether other ideas people have about this particular area in our jurisdiction under the bylaw.
Well, I mean, the other things we've talked about for some of these 40Bs are related, for instance, to lighting. I mean, if there's lighting near that pond, that's going to most likely disturb any aquatic life or turtles or this and that. So, and there's a high likelihood they're going to want to light that driveway. So I think lighting would be a big issue.
Timer, there's the color of the lighting, there's where it's directed, and the timing maybe.
Yep.
Maybe they don't need to have it all the time.
Yep, I think that's such a good point, because I think people nowadays are obsessed with having lights on around their properties all the time, as if their headlights don't work. You know, it's like, yes, your headlights actually do work, and you can make your way along a driveway without all that lighting.
Yeah, no, I think especially for that part there, and even where it's directed, they can have it, make sure that it's, because now with the LED stuff, you can control, or any fixture, you can control well where it's directed. I'm not sure if those circles there are all lights, but we can get that. We could make some recommendations around lighting. Any other ideas from folks?
I can't tell much about the degree to which those are contour lines. And so there's going to be a real bank. I guess, so I think you were kind of bringing this up before, Michael, that as much as possible to keep the elevation of the driveway similar to what it is today, because I do feel like if there are little creatures and stuff that are leaving that pond and trying to get across the site as a whole, it's going to be a challenge if there's, you know, a big berm or just all sorts of things in the way. So I think grading that as closely as possible resembles the natural landscape would be good.
Right. I mean, not that there's a great place for them to go over there, as opposed to hopefully they'll all go the other way.
Yeah, but you know what? They don't know that. They're just little turtles.
No, that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm wondering whether you don't want to make it more appealing for them to go that way, that you actually want to stymie them, since it's not a productive way to go.
Well, we've done before, you know, when we were talking at Coolidge, we also talked about like an underpass, right? A little protected tunnel culvert. I think that would be a great thing to put here because I
don't see it here.
What?
I don't see it here because there's no place close by to go.
Well, I think they would be crossing downhill toward the wetlands on the Moore's property. That's
a long way to go.
Are you kidding me? We had this ginormous turtle this summer on Western Avenue that was, who knows where it was coming from. It was more than 100 feet away. It was like 300 feet away from the closest wetland. I mean, you know, these turtles just head for wherever they had.
I know. I guess that goes back to right. It's that sort of right. Maybe I'm being too. I mean, maybe we could get some help from the peer reviewer on wildlife habitat, because right, I can't tell whether right, do we want to promote them going in that direction versus not? I guess I don't know. Maybe that's a question.
I think that's a good question for peer reviewer. Like, will they naturally be inclined to go downhill? Because on the other side, it goes up. Remember, there's almost like a ridge. So
it's not so much of a ridge on the level here. It's actually not that much of a change going due east. It's definitely a ridge going up to that way.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, I think it's a good idea to talk to a peer reviewer. Like, would they tend to try to go across the site to get to the wetlands? I don't know what kind of instincts they have, but maybe, I don't know. Steve, are you raising your hand because you know about these critters?
I raised my hand because I have some questions, but not because I have specific knowledge about these critters.
So
why don't we just bring it as an issue for the peer reviewer and we can talk about it.
In terms of conditioning, I don't see, well, I guess this is the wrong plan for it, but anywhere that's within the 100-foot of the pond, I would want to see trees planted there. I mean, if they're gonna disturb banks and do all sorts of grading, I would want to make sure that there's sufficient shade in that area afterwards.
Well, that's the issue of coming up with a landscaping plan for the right. That's what I would say, is coming up with what is wetlands and buffer zone appropriate for this whole area here that I'm highlighting, because this is where the 100-foot goes out here. So yeah, no, I would like to see how we do basically a landscape plan for the buffer zone there.
Right now, as you recall, is kind of a wooded, kind of a moist wooded area, right?
Only it's wooded here. It's not wooded here.
Right, but you were pointing up there.
Right.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That it would be nice, and whether to make this, I'm not sure what's the best habitat to create given these conditions, or whether as Jacob said, whether basically we do want it to be relatively treed in some way.
Well, they're gonna add a lot of impervious surface and a lot of asphalt, which will, so that means the need for trees will be greater than it is right now.
Right. So we have to go, maybe that's part of working with the peer reviewer about what's the appropriate to landscape plan for that particular area.
Also, I think, you know, Jacob's bringing up a good point that you know, we should be looking at how much, like, what's the right ratio for, I guess within the 50 to 100, though, there's not a huge amount of impervious surface, but still you would expect them to address that.
Isn't a big chunk of the road in that?
Yeah,
Or,
it's part of the road, right here.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Up to here, the road is basically in the, so it's this segment here, if you can see.
So
my
yeah, so remediation of, I don't know, whatever it is, 2 to 1.
Well, whatever it is, yeah, no, that's the problem, is that there's limited spots for remediation.
But we should still request it.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I said. I mean, that's why that's the first item. The biggest thing is how to do one of the biggest things is how to do the whole landscaping plan for this area, extent that we can at least argue for that. They could, obviously there'd be interesting landscaping issues elsewhere, but that's the only thing in our jurisdiction. So let's see, I guess this is that one tree there now, I guess.
Michael, I think Brian still has his hand up.
Yeah, right, I was gonna get there. Okay, Brian, Steve, did you finish with your hand up before I go to Brian?
No, but Brian, go ahead of me. No, I'm not.
Sorry, Brian, go.
That's okay. I just had a couple things that I thought maybe commission members would be interested in. First of all, you're all familiar with the land development tab on the town's webpage, where Jeannie Guthrie posts a bunch of information that comes in from different boards and committees. I don't know if anyone has looked, but you'll find that the Groundwater Protection Committee has posted one of the most thorough and thoughtful letters I've ever seen written by a town board about what the impact of this project is going to be on this property. So I'd encourage you all to read the GPC letter if you haven't read it yet. I think Tom and Andrea did a great job over there. And so that would be one thing I would recommend members review before you try to select things and recommendations to get back to ZBA on. Number two, during previous iterations in front of this board, either through this project or 53 or 55, I myself prepared a presentation on the water course, which originates at that pond and travels due west across what is that front side street in the development. And one thing that is, if you can't get the applicant to reduce the size of the development, you might consider, because the pond is connected to those wetlands right now through the ground there, through that water course, you might consider having them do, I know that we had neighbors who lived near the Charles River and they had to put in like a flood-proof basement where basically in this town, it would be a double plus good, because you would eliminate the desire of people to refinish their basements as, you know, rooms that aren't counted against their septic. And if you had them using basements that were flood ready, it wouldn't impede that water course, and it wouldn't impede the ability of the water to travel from the pond and the wetlands to the east across the site to its discharge point at the property line. That's something else you might consider. And there was also another presentation, I think, that I forwarded in April about this development, which had some of the other stormwater issues on there, including, it was either then or maybe it was on the 53 or maybe the 2 parcels that he ended up withdrawing his applications from, where we presented the aerial imagery of the flooding that has occurred on this property. And the area subject to flooding actually extends essentially out to where your 100-foot buffer zone is. And those images are readily available on Google Earth and Mass GIS. And they're in your record somewhere, either for this project or for 53. I think that would be an opportunity for your committee to really say, look, this is the area subject to flooding as we now understand it, and it goes out to here, and they shouldn't be building roadways through areas that are subject to flooding, even under state law, I don't believe. So I would just encourage you to look at those 3 things. And if anyone wanted me to put another presentation or speak to you again about the water course or the flooding or anything else, I'd be more than happy to do that. Thank you.
I guess I wanted to comment on what Brian's saying, that as part of our submission to the ZBA, I think that is important for us to point out the documentation of land subject to flooding, which we've talked about anecdotally, but especially if there is state protection for this related to roads, and that should be a consideration, because of course it would protect the pond more as well. If it floods up to the 100, it should be protected to the 100.
Well, that is, I mean, as we talked about it last time, and as in part of what I said in the beginning of talking to the peer reviewer, is to make sure that they register that volume that has been used, so that when they're doing the stormwater calculations, they take into account the ability to maintain that capacity for stormwater. As I believe, I guess I forgot to go look at it again, as I believe under the state regulations for isolated land subject to flooding, they basically have to be able to maintain sufficient capacity, that they're not diminishing the capacity of that. And so I think that's part of why it was one of the issues that I brought up to them when I asked them that we could talk to the peer reviewer on stormwater. So I think that'll certainly come up in the stormwater review, and we will be highlighting that as a concern, that it is appropriately addressed. It's just a matter of making sure that they're dealing with it now. And so if they don't answer us soon about talking to the peer reviewer, I guess I would, I guess if I don't hear it soon, whether even before the next meeting, we can decide as an issue that whether I can write a simple, short, few sentence email to the ZBA saying that make sure that the stormwater review deals with the isolated land subject to flooding capacity based on observed levels and the state regulations.
Yeah, and the reason I keep coming back to it, Michael, is that I remember reading at some point that MACC had the guidelines where we talked about this ages ago, that if you have documentation of the kind that Brian's talking about, then that is sufficient. That's also can be sufficient evidence. So I just
I'm not just right. I think we're all on the same page. Just
okay, that's submitted.
They just have to see the documentation and factor in that capacity in the analysis, so that they're not undermining what that is.
I think it would be good with this letter to include that kind of detail.
Oh, you're right. We have the pictures. We'll just include the pictures and say, as an example, this is. So just to get the ball rolling.
Right.
It's something like that, so that they make sure that they understand that this is there's been an issue. This is an issue for the stormwater people, and that we're going to be looking to make sure they deal with it properly in their review. Okay, Steve.
I have some points and then some questions, really. First of all, if you look at the prior map where it shows the wetland edge and the pond circumference and the buffer zones, it seems likely that the water exceeds the edge of the wetlands. I guess that's not a contradiction necessarily, but how do you determine, does it matter what the pond is, or is it just the wetlands that matter?
It's at the state level, it's sort of for isolated land subject to flooding. It's just them defining what the water capacity is. So whatever demarcation there is here is not necessarily, if I understand it correctly, the fact that the water exceeds what might be marked as wetlands here is not an issue. They have to look at what the capacity of what that isolated land subject to flooding has been flooded to at some point in time. And so that the demarcation that we have here is, if I understand it right, and we'll find out from the peer reviewers, that it's not, that is not what's guiding the stormwater work.
Okay, just more questions. Bear with me. Just so that little little bump in the road that looks like it's the 50-foot buffer zone or some buffer zone bumping that driveway a little bit.
Here,
that's not. Yeah, on the sort of on the eastern side though. Why is it? Is that an attempt to try to skirt that buffer zone? If you go up the pointer up just a tiny bit, right there to the right.
Here, you're talking about this area?
No, just below. See, it's not a straight road, and it could be a straight road. Is that an attempt to try to do
about this thing, this curve here?
Yeah, yes. Question, I don't.
Yeah, beats me. I'm not sure. However, they yep, I guess if anything, I guess it's to our favor that it's not going straight up. I guess it's not clear to me why they did it, but I'm not sure.
Okay, it's not a too big a point. I'm just curious if that was somehow.
I have no idea what it is.
Okay, what you're describing is maybe getting more vegetation in the wetland buffer. There's a considerable amount of fill going into, it looks like raising the driveway up. So that's sort of not it's not a gradation from the wetland area to upland land. It's really more like a wall. And I don't know if that's a problem or not. It seems like when coming before, the concern was that if there was a kind of wall there, it might make things more subject to flooding, west and south. So
yeah, no, that's what I think the stormwater, that's part of the thing that we would have to make sure the stormwater people review that carefully, so that basically that they are not forcing water off-site onto the east or to the south onto the road. That should be that's a major issue. I agree.
Okay, just a couple more questions. Sorry, I'm just it helps me more clear. So it's not our responsibility to look at the stormwater retention of that. That's some professional organizations can evaluate that. Is that correct?
The peer reviewers, they have their engineer do the analysis, and then the peer reviewer will go over the analysis and see if it meets all of the standards and the regulations. And our thing is the stormwater standards are somewhat specific in certain ways, but we want to make sure, and what we tell them is that they make sure they also deal with the isolated land subject to flooding as per the state regulations carefully. But, and that, because right, if they're reducing the capacity of that area for flooding, they have to make sure that they're either somehow changing the flow into that area, or I'm not sure how they're, I mean, I can't tell whether that's what these basins here, B, C, and B1, whether these basins are a way of, that there's some calculation for the size of these, that's managing to deal with the fact that they might be reducing the storage capacity with the road and the berm in this world here, that this is some way of compensating. But that's hopefully what we will see, that the stormwater peer review checks carefully.
Okay, one last question. I think I know the answer to this, but the peer reviewers or whomever, they're not going to look at, like the creatures in the pond and the ecological changes that would occur. That's not really part of what they need to do. Is that correct?
Well, we can ask them for wildlife. No, I think one of the things we're going to come to is that I think we want to ask them to see whether there are some wildlife impacts that we can ask the peer reviewer to look at and see whether there's something that could be done to avoid any, or to see whether there are impacts by essentially blocking off this side here and making it more thing there. There's still, I don't know whether they would say that fine, over half of the perimeter. I guess basically 2/3 of it is not changing. But I think we will ask for a wetlands review to say whether there's anything, I guess a wildlife review, to see whether there's some impacts that can be avoided. And what they might suggest would be my way. We'll have to draft something that we can look at. Okay. Yeah, one other thing about the fill is that we would also put in, that you bring up, that we have regulations about fill that we would ask them to meet in terms of the quality of the fill. Not that at least would apply to what's in there in terms of the cleanliness of the fill and what's in it. So that we would also bring that up. In the past, I think we've also gotten that. In the past, when we've done this, the comprehensive permit has adopted the fill regulations that we have in terms of what the quality is. But yeah, the wildlife thing, we got to figure out how to word that. I mean, we'll have to agree. We'll have to draft something, and then we can sort it out at the next meeting. So the only thing to do before the next meeting is to push on the stormwater and the isolated land subject to flooding issue. And then the other stuff we can redraft that at the next meeting if people want to ask more than what I might draft. But I'm not sure what other mitigation. Sorry, 9:40. I'm not sure. I guess most of the rest of it is outside of our jurisdiction, even though, right, it would be nice to. I gather some of this stuff has all changed. I think they've changed how they're doing some of the solar.
Okay, I think you've answered my questions for now anyways. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess they're staying out of the buffer zone over here, except for this little bit here that I don't think we're going to have much to say other than they'll just be vegetated. Other people have other ideas as to what we might suggest or ask for.
Can I do a follow-up?
Sure.
Does the town, I think the town does have some regulations about building on sloped areas. Do you know if that's something they seek a waiver for? Because that's pretty hilly on the backside of that parcel. Or is that something that there's no equivalency to that under state regs, so they're just going to ask to waive it?
Beats me. You can look at the waivers list, but it's outside of our jurisdiction. So unfortunately, it's not something that we can make any comments on other than.
Okay. And then my last question is just, again, I'm still trying to wrap my head around jurisdiction and process. If they do something during this project which changes water flow or anything into an area of your jurisdiction, does that extend your it doesn't extend your jurisdiction, but it extends your ability to try to control that issue? Is that correct?
No. I'll offer my, it's like, I mean, when there's a direct connection, like down here, maybe.
Yeah, that's our biggest concern right now.
We can comment on that. So we want to know exactly what's going on there.
Okay. And
but
then
to other things that might change, for example, as we've learned, clearly the septic system, who knows we know where the effluent's probably going to go to some extent as to what it might mean for the wetlands. Is you don't know for sure, but it's something that's a concern. But we have no standing to say.
Can you ask the town's independent reviewer to do a nitrate and mounding analysis? Because at 80 feet and 78 bedrooms, when you're when you've got a couple feet of overburden, it's gonna turn those wetlands into a duck pond.
we don't have that kind of standing as we learned before, and that kind of septic analysis is beyond what we can ask for. That's some other jurisdiction.
Okay, and then when the process related, and I'm sorry, Michael, to bring this up again, about the existing order of conditions still being recorded at the Registry of Deeds for a project that he is obviously not going to do. Can you, would the committee consider revoking it at this point? Because
No.
I don't think he's going to, if I was him, I don't think I would apply for a new NOI.
It's getting late. I'll cut you off a little bit and say, I don't think it makes a difference. Others on the commission can say something different. I don't think it makes a difference anyway, and we don't, and that's, I don't think we have the ability to do it anyway.
He hasn't done anything. First line of the WPA form, it says, when you don't comply with this, you shall revoke it. It shall be revoked.
But he hasn't done anything not to comply. He hasn't done anything there that's out of compliance with it. He's still standing. He's not doing anything that I know of that would trigger that. And whether it's in place or not, I don't think it makes any difference, to be honest. I mean, you bring it up a bunch, but I'm not quite sure what the operational value is. Even if we could revoke it, that it makes any difference whatsoever. I'm just shooting from the hip on that. It's like it
allows us to re-adjudicate all of these issues, I think, in a proper forum.
No, I disagree with that, but I'm not sure what all these issues are, but it's getting a little late here. And whether other commission members want to pursue that issue, I don't see that what gets to be re-adjudicated anyway. And even revoking it doesn't change anything. Jacob? Whoops. Did you?
It looks like the septic system right now, the system itself is staying out of the 100-foot, but a bunch of the grading and limit of work is not. Can we ask that the grading and limit of work around the septic system stay out of the 100?
Sure. We could certainly ask it and say that it'll be.
You can ask anything. It doesn't mean they'll give it to us.
No, but it's right.
But I be our starting.
We can ask.
No, I would say that's part of we can fold that under the reduced size to get out of the buffers. The thought that Carol brought up.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. Anything else? Any other ideas? This is not the last time we could come up with ideas, but unless anybody has anything more, I'd say we could try to draft something up for our discussion at the next meeting. Is anybody else? I can't see everybody on my screen. Does anybody else here want to say anything?
Thank you for hearing our concerns. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. I appreciate your involvement.
Invest in Tums. I'm eating them like chiclets these days.
Okay. Okay. In that case, I think we're through with this for now. Till next time. In that case, are there any other? I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see who's here. I don't know who 253 was. Okay. In that case, is there any other issues or topics for tonight? I think we've covered the whole agenda. And if there's nothing that anybody else has to say, we'll move to adjourn, or somebody will jump in and do that.
Second that.
Okay. I guess I move to adjourn at 9:50. Any discussion? actually under discussion, I'll say to people that our next meeting is on the 5th. I'll just let you know that the ZBA is meeting on the 40Bs. I think a few of them on the day before, if people want to see what's going on with this project there.
When are they expecting our comments, Michael?
I guess they weren't expecting it at any particular time. That's why I'd just like to get it done at the next meeting.
I think it would be good. Yeah, because sometimes they don't ask us and then they move along with the process without our input, or it feels like that's going to happen.
No, I mean, we usually get our 2 cents in there, whether they accept it or not, who knows. But yeah, I'm mainly concerned about the, I guess, that we get in what help we want from the peer reviewer, as well as that we get the stormwater dealt with well.
Michael, are you going to draft something for us to review at the next one? Or did you want somebody else to take a stab at that?
If you want to take a draft, I was going to try to at least do some raising the issues about the stormwater before our next meeting, based on our discussion tonight, and that we can repeat it and include it in our formal one. But I just want to head them off on the regulatory stuff around the isolated land subject to flooding.
I mean, if you want to write something, I'm happy to review it and add whatever. I've been taking notes.
But if you want to draft something on the bigger picture on everything, I'm more than happy to share that task with somebody. If you want to write up some parts about wildlife or something, if you want to send me something about what you're willing to write up,
okay,
or anybody else's, and then I can patch in with that. So tell me no, and I want to just focus on making sure I get something on the stormwater. And
because we've talked about a lot of things tonight, so I can at least come up with basically a list of what.
Sure. And draft it. It's always easy to add to something like that.
Okay.
And I'll make sure we get the photos right of the degree of water in the pond, so that the peer reviewer has that sooner than later.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, I think that was the further discussion on a move to adjourn. So any other discussion? Okay. Then roll call vote. Michael, aye. Steve?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
The meeting has ended.